Hello, Camelia. Hello, Annika. Hello, Siamäk. Welcome to the Artful Leaders in Times of Transition, our 7th edition, where we talk about values. Warmly welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Great to be here.
Great to have you here. So today we are going to explore a lot of content around values, and I think interestingly we talk about company values so often now, especially in this context of transition times, right? With so many crises that we had to fend and being really reactive around everything that we needed to solve in the past few years, and values have become increasingly important for companies, and more than just words that we remember and we connect to, they are driving our behavior. And every time we are in a pickle, in a difficult situation, it helps us to return to our values and connect our own actions to how we wish we would behave with others and in the world. So just a very short introduction and our agenda today. So we are co-founders. I'm Alexandra Marila. I'm a host of this event, and I'm a senior strategist at Co-Founders. We've been organizing these events for about 3 years now, since I actually joined Co-Founders. And our CEO, Adlercreutz, also sends her regards. She's actually part of the audience today as she's traveling. Our scope is to help companies implement their business strategies through these, we call them 2 sides of the coin: branding and the relationships with external stakeholders, as well as company culture, which is determining very much the relationship with employees. And perhaps connected with this area of discovering and living our values, it very much takes place within the company culture internally, but then it is also seen externally. So the actions of companies are also judged according to the values that they say that they have. So I think this topic is very relevant today, and I'm very happy to have you as guests and as participants. So we'll start with a short introduction about values. What are values and why are they important for us? How they manifest in our behavior. Then we'll continue with a workshop where Siamäk and Annika will map their personal values and then connect them to the company values in their respective companies. And then we'll end with some conclusions and key takeaways. If you have questions during the session, please write them in the chat, and we'll come back to them later. So a couple of introductions. First of all, our facilitator today, Camelia Păduraru, is a dear friend of mine, and we also met in university in Bucharest. So we were both studying communications, and then afterwards we both studied at the same university, business management. And Camelia is a professional I really respect and admire. She has trained herself in neurolinguistic programming in the US, and then returned to Romania, established a very successful business nowadays for many years, since 2012. And she's been working with many people, both individuals and organizations, helping them understand their behavior and also change their behavior. And I think this is a really interesting point during the times today where we need to adjust ourselves to the environment so much. So welcome, Camelia.
Thank you, Alexandra. Good to be here, and it's good to meet you, Annika and Siamäk. What can I say? Wow, listening to you speaking about me and how we met and how we've known each other, and the education we've done together, and looking at how it all unfolded and how we serve the world by putting it into action. It's honoring, and thank you for having me here.
Thank you for joining us. It's a pleasure and a joy when things connect later in life.
Yeah.
And then we have Siamäk Naghian, the managing director of Genelec, joining us from Iisalmi. Welcome, Siamäk, and very happy to have you here. We were just talking before starting the live session that he's a very profound thinker, very analytical. It's always a pleasure to listen to your speeches, and also inspiring at another level, except for professional, also in a personal way, very inspiring your journey in Finland, how you moved here and learned the language and really integrated and being part of a company with such a big legacy. And for me, as a foreigner here, it is very inspiring to look at your journey. So Siamäk has been in Genelec for a really long time, since 2005 as product development director, and then subsequently vice president of the company. And since 2011, he's the managing director. Thank you, Siamäk, for joining, and welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you. My pleasure. Very, very interesting subject. I have always been interested in that, because I think this is a certain area that as a human being, we think that, usually we think that we know all what we do and why we do. And in terms of leadership and the dynamic of community, I think it's very important to get into this subject, because actually I think that, and this is something that I think it is well known, that the whole thing that we know about ourselves is about maybe 5% in maximum. So yeah. Very, very interesting subject. Thank you. My pleasure to be here.
Wonderful. Very good point. Yes, we always find things from ourselves. We're like this puzzle pieces that are turned upside down, and then we make these small islands bit by bit throughout our lives. And then we have Annika Jyllilä-Vertigans, who's the CEO at Vieser, also a family company like Genelec as well. So you have this in common, and also very long legacy. And Annika is owner and entrepreneur at Pare Group as well, and Vieser is actually part of Pare Group. She has many years of experience in business, and she's also extremely inspiring, very analytical in her thinking, and from what I have seen from her, very dedicated to bringing the values to life inside Vieser and inside the whole group. Thank you, Annika, for being here.
Thank you so much for the invitation. Wonderful to be here. And indeed, I've always said that we're a very values-driven company. But yesterday I was trying to put pen to paper to map my own values and realized that it's not easy. So I'm really looking forward to being here and learning a lot today about the topic as well. As you were saying, the perma-crisis that we're living through at the moment, it really requires us to find those anchors somewhere where we find safety and sort of inclusion. So looking forward to it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Well, let's begin then and see what insights we find in this session. So now I will give the screen to Cami, actually. So let me make you host.
I think co-host works just as well.
Okay, well, you can back, but now I think you have it.
Yeah, can you see the slides? All good?
Yes.
Perfect. Perfect. All right, so let's dive in.
Wonderful. Okay, well, first of all, I want to ask you a little bit about NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, and just before diving into values and unpacking it from this perspective, how does NLP help us understand our behavior and change our behavior? And yeah, a little bit open up this area that maybe for some of us is not as known.
Right, so NLP, the way I see it coming from neuro-linguistic programming, is a model. It's an easy functional model that helps us understand how we make decisions, how we generate our behaviors, where our reactions are coming from, why do we do what we do and why we don't do what we don't do, and how can we influence that. And it's based on our perception of reality. So if I were to chunk it up and summarize in short what it is about, it explains how we perceive the world. So there's information coming into our senses all the time. And this is the neuro part, in neuro-linguistic programming. Our senses taking in information all the time. Now, this information is coming in ginormous amounts. So there's no way that we can process it all. So our nervous system is deleting, distorting, and generalizing information all the time in the process of creating our perception. Now, this perception generates a certain internal state, which can be, a curious state, a neutral state, a happy state, a not so happy state, a grumpy state, a scared state. These are just examples. And that state then influences our bodies, starting with, posture. We call it physiology in NLP, the way we stand, the way we look, the way we use our gestures, all the way through, biochemical changes in our bodies, because there's hormones and neurotransmitters that get triggered by our states. And then all this packed together produces behavior, which leads to certain results, which then become new input for our nervous systems, right? Now, the key thing in NLP is that, first of all, there's many applications of this. One of the conclusions here is that the quality of our perception is directly connected to the quality of our behaviors and therefore quality of our results. Now, one of the main discoveries I've had with NLP is that perception is not reality. And there's many issues arising from the fact that we overlap the two. We mistake perception for reality, which is not the case. And then this perception is greatly, greatly influenced by our unconscious internal filters. They are very personal, they're unique to each individual. And just to list a few examples, there's attitudes, there's memories, and there's good memories, there's bad memories. And I know we don't necessarily like talking about this, but this also relates to trauma in the past. Then there's emotions, there's beliefs, there's values, our topics today, something we call meta programs, perception of time, space, matter, energy. So imagine information going through all these filters instantaneously in the process of our perception being created. Mm-hmm. So what NLP gives us is a way to become aware of these filters and a toolkit to be able to influence them so they serve us better, so they lead to better results.
Mm-hmm. So starting by understanding and unpacking that perception that comes from all of these different layers, then we can also alter that. By changing the perception, we also change our behavior in the long run, but it's kind of incremental, I imagine.
Yeah, and it's also becoming aware of these filters, because the thing here is that the ones with most leverage, the ones with the greatest influence on behavior, tend to also be the most unconscious. So we're not consciously aware of them, right?
Who's driving? That's the big question, especially in times of crisis and in times of very rapid change. Great.
Yeah.
Thank you for this introduction in NLP. I think it sets the stage for how we will unpack the values and what they mean, and why they are important. So let's start with that. What are values and why are they so important for us?
Values, simply put, is what drives our behavior, is what motivates us, what's important to us. And I know there's like a slightly different sense of the word in the context of NLP, because in general, when we talk about values, we refer to ethical principles like truth, like fairness,
aspirational values, right?
aspirational and imperative, kind of like guiding principles in life. This can be found in our values. However, what we mean by values in NLP is what drives our behavior. So it's the answer to the question, what's important to you about life in general, about different areas of life, like family, career, relationships, your own personal development. It's not what we like, but what's important. So that's why many times we do things we don't like, and we do them. Why? Because they're important. Something about them is important there. Also, they influence, so they directly relate to the way we spend our time, to the ways or things that we're willing to expend our money, our resources for. And it's those things we tend to move towards in life or away from. It's with regards to values, we can also, we can either move towards something, trying to achieve, and we call this attraction or towards motivation, or we can move away from something, so doing something in order to avoid something else, and this is more like fear-based type of motivation direction.
Yeah, that's very interesting, because we always think about values as this sort of top of pyramid, beautiful, aspirational, something that we should be and something that we should behave as, although you sort of expand the definition of what values are by connecting it to what is really important, because it sort of goes down that pyramid to really almost like survival values and things that are really unconscious, but like you said, very, very important to us. So I'm very keen to exploring this further.
Yeah, so I have a little bit of what I covered previously. So these short definitions and why they matter. Now, talking about surviving, and this is especially important in times of change, in times of transition, in crisis. Let me go to a little, to a visual anchor here. So values manifest in our behavior, right? So what really, really, really drives us shows in the way we behave. Now, what's not immediately obvious is that there's more than one layer to our values. It's our behavior, and we in NLP we use this concept of neurology. It's like the complexity of our nervous system and the behavioral options that we have integrated up to this point. For short, it's the amount and the variety of behaviors that we're able to manifest. Now, values are at a higher level of thinking, and they sometimes tend to go beyond our neurological capacity. And there's this metaphor of a cup here. So imagine this cup being our body, our nervous system, with the capacity it's developed up to this point. Then we have the values, which is the content, the coffee inside, and this is the thinking. Now, many times thinking can go beyond our neurology, our behaviors. And then this cup lives in an environment. Yeah, so imagine a warm cup of coffee. If I put it out in the snow, it will get cold very quickly. If I put it on a stove, it will start to boil. So there's an environment which constantly acts upon our neurology, either pushing it to grow and develop, either being in a perfect match. And this is, when we feel very comfortable in our lives, it's like we're equipped to successfully meet the requirements and the challenges in our environments. And then the environment can also oppress or prevent the neurology from further development. Yeah, it's the snow that freezes or the frost that freezes the coffee. So all of these are interconnected. And what's happening in times of crisis especially is that we tend to go back to, even if our thinking is complex and very well developed, we tend to revert to the so-called already like the cemented paths in our neurology.
The patterns, right? The well-known patterns.
Yeah. And to give you another representation of this, so think about the brain. There is one brain, but there's different parts of the brain. And thinking has to do with our neocortex here, complex thinking, aspirations, growth-oriented behaviors. Here is where our decision-making takes place. It's perception, it's consciousness, attention, imagination, creativity, self-regulation. It's where our ability to control our behaviors lies. Yeah. Now, we have these other two brains, which is the limbic system and the brainstem, which are older structures, which have to do with our survival mechanisms and survival instincts and impulses. In the limbic system, we have like functions specialized in survival, attachment, emotions. And then we have the brainstem, which is the oldest part of the brain, which maintains the body functions and gets triggered when our brain perceives threat. And I like to distinguish these two in like neocortex being the thriving mechanisms of the brain, brainstem plus limbic system is surviving. We also have this analogy of the conscious mind, which has to do with thinking, rationalization, imagination, creativity, and the unconscious mind, which stores our emotions and our impulses, and our values, by the way, are stored in the unconscious. So we can think very far when the environmental conditions are supportive in that way, and we feel safe and we feel connected and we feel significant. However, when we perceive a threat, like the neocortex, this is what's happening. The neocortex, it's like shutting down. Says bye-bye, see you later.
And then somebody else is in the driving seat, right?
Exactly. It's the limbic system and the brainstem get in charge. And then we tend to react. We go into survival mode. And in survival mode, it's what? Fight, flight, freeze.
Yeah.
With different behaviors resulting from that one.
So what happens to the values then in this sort of fight or conflict between the brains? That's interesting to open up and to explore. And I think maybe at some level, consciously or unconsciously, we've all gone through this during the past few years. And sometimes we surprised ourselves. And I was talking to people both, in my personal life and professionally, other leaders and people working in different industries, that somehow you have the sense that maybe you're challenged to that extent at times that it feels like you are behaving against your values. But you are actually not. You are just going to the survival values to sort of lower on the pyramid. And then those things are important to you. So you're behaving from that perspective.
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes we can have conflicting behaviors, conflicting values in our own system. So let's mention briefly how we discover values. They're the answer to the question, what's important to you about life, about your career, about your business, about your team, about your family, right? And then I bet that the moment I ask this question, there are some things coming up to your mind. Those are the more consciously aware values. But then the magic starts to happen when we repeat this question and we ask again, then what else is important to you about? Because we're gonna hit kind of like a threshold in our consciousness, and then we'll come up with another set of, I don't know, 2, 3, 4. I will give a process around this one. Hold on, I got lost a little bit in the slides. Just a second. Yeah, then we'll ask again, like, what else is important to you about life, business, career, and so on. And we'll have another layer of 3 or 4 values. And then we'll organize them in a hierarchy. We name it, we call it. We'll have a list and we'll organize it from the most important value to the least important value. This is easier said than done because sometimes we can have a hard time deciding, is this more important or is this more important? If I had A, but I didn't have B, would it be okay?
Yeah.
Then if I had B, but I didn't have A, would it be okay?
Yeah. So which one is actually more important?
More important. Yeah.
And that takes a lot of self-reflection and brutal honesty at times.
Yeah. And self-awareness. So we will have this list. Now, each person has their individual list of personal values. Even if we have values in common, each individual set is unique. And there's a relationship. Our values can be aligned. They can support each other and be built on top of each other. And this is the state of alignment when things flow. And if I meet value A, then value B gets automatically met as well. And then value C as well. And all the way down that list.
It all flows very well and nice.
Yeah. Or we can have values that are in conflict with each other. Like I notice very often with the clients I work with, they have, like, for instance, profit and freedom, and they're in conflict, and they perceive that if I increase my profitability and I put my energy towards that, and I'll reduce my freedom. Now, if I increase my freedom, I'll decrease profitability. So these are values.
Yeah. And you also had, I mean, just a quick mention on this, and then let's try to move to the workshop session, but this example stayed with me because you refer to values that are attraction values, that are thriving values, right, that push you forward, and then values that are based or come from fear, and then they're sort of rejection values, or then just mere survival values. And then you gave an example of innovation that can be either or. Can you expand on that briefly?
Yeah, absolutely. So each value, now values have these, they're expressed in a single word or a key phrase, and the words are generally quote unquote positive, right? It's innovation, it's profitability, it's freedom, it's collaboration, it's communication. All of these are examples of values, yeah. And they all sound very positive, right? Now, there's a second question. So if we take whatever value, just pick one, and we ask, why is this value important to you? This gives us what we call the direction of our motivation. So let's take innovation. Why is innovation important to you? Is it because it's exciting to build new things? It's because you're exploring what else is possible? Is it because you want to make a difference or solve new problems in the world? These would be towards direction, motivation, or attraction. Or is it because you don't want to be left behind, or you don't want to not keep up with what's going on?
So it's fear-based in that case.
It's fear-based. So whenever you express negations, so that I don't, or so that we don't, so, or that we avoid this, that, it's called away from motivation, and this can be sabotaging at times. It provides energy for action up to a certain point.
The sense of urgency, but then you can't run on that fuel for too long.
Exactly, and this is something that tends to put people in burnout. It's how we get exhausted, stressed out, always operating from an alert state. It's like the threat is there all the time, and you have to go, run. And yeah, this is something that can be explored, can be discovered, and then it can also be cleared so that we redirect our motivation more towards and we turn it into an attraction, based on trust, based on inspiration. However,
so you can flip the same value if you're conscious about what drives it, and then find other drivers behind it.
Yeah, you definitely can, as long as you're aware of it. And you also have to find different ways of managing the environment, because if a crisis hits, or if there's a real threat in the environment, now, of course, you'll be motivated to move away from that threat. Our limbic system, that's wired for survival, will focus on the threat, so it avoids the threat, right? It's one of my favorite topics. I don't know how we're with time, how we're doing time-wise here.
We're on time to start the workshop. So actually, if you make me a host again, then I will share the screen and try to be your right hand here, writing things. And then I invite Annika and Siamäk to join and start the workshop session.
Thank you, Alexandra, for your questions. It's like my brain is firing up with this topic.
Okay, maybe we start with just briefly identifying your personal values, because that's the first sort of step, and then connecting that later on with the company values. But then I'll give the the voice to you, and I will just share the slides. So let me know when you see it.
Yeah, we see it. Okay.
I think I'm skipping some things here. Yeah.
Okay. So, welcome, Annika and Siamäk.
Thank you. Thank you.
Very, very curious to learn about your values.
So am I.
Yeah. So what this slide is displaying is kind of like a pre-work, and I'm saying this for our participants to know what is it that we're exploring here. It's a more elaborate process to discover our personal values. So as I mentioned, we have these areas of life like career, family, relationships, development, health, spirituality, or of course they can have different labels depending on how we define them for each and every one of us. A good idea is to prioritize these areas of life based on the level of importance that we assign to each of them. And then there's another part to this process, which explores our personal values in one of these areas or in life in general. And let's see how did you do with this one? If you had the chance to go through these questions, I would like to hear from each of you. What did you discover? Was there anything that surprised you? How was it for you?
Annika, please.
Oh. Very polite, both of us. If I kick off, let me have a look. For me, family was absolutely number one. That was the most important thing. But after that, I had big difficulties in prioritizing between health, development, and relationships, as they all are so very important. And depending on the lens that I use to kind of sort of reflect upon it, the order changed. And then after that, career and spirituality. Spirituality, surprisingly, was the last one, but I realized that I presumably am quite a practical person then. And they sort of, even though I feel that a certain sort of self-fulfillment and reflection is super important, I put that into the bucket of development and learning and thinking rather than spirituality.
Right.
So there.
That's amazing. And could I ask you, because you said you had a hard time organizing development, relationships, and health. How did you make the decision when you decided on what's their order?
I didn't really. They're still sort of jumbled up there. I suppose. There are certain reasons why I feel, for instance, that health is super important now. Life going on, and you realize that you want to be healthy also for your family and so forth and so on. But then I realized in my day-to-day life, I don't put sports in the sort of first priority, but rather the self-development or the relationship building, where I've seemed to create a lot of causes where to do spend my time. So I know that there are these values that I hold dear, and then but my actions are very conflicting to those values. But it was a little sort of mini, how should I put it? Mini break into myself last night, sort of realizing these conflictions and internal conversations.
This is a perfect example, and I want to make this point for our participants as well. It's a great example of where the difference between aspirational values and actual values lie. So we have at the conscious level, okay, this is important to me, and then we have our behaviors which match or don't match those aspirational values. So if we want to be very, very honest on what our values actually are, the most truthful indicator is where we put our time, our energy, our money. This is the behavior. And then, of course, we can expand onto the higher level values, and becoming aware of this helps a lot.
And it certainly is something that seems to fluctuate with time and situation as well.
Yeah, of course. When environmental conditions change, our values tend to change. Yeah, and we've seen that with the pandemic, and now with what's happening in the world, they shift a lot. Yeah. All right, thank you, Annika, for sharing. Let's see, Siamäk, how about you?
Yeah, thank you very much. Very, very interesting. And actually, I can continue from the last sentence that you had, because for some reason it has become more and more important for me, or I would say that obvious for me, that number one thing is that what we really understand from these words. And then another thing is that for a long time, I believe that values are those things that actually they don't change so much. But personally, I have realized that they are evolving, they are changing, and this is something that in your last sentence you were touching. So basically, environment, you know, and where we live, it may have a big impact. I have done this exercise a couple of times, and actually it's very interesting. I really appreciate that you touched a very deep point here now. But my first choice is spiritual, and the second one is health. But I see so much interconnection between these two, because I look at healthy as a kind of physical and spiritual things. So they're interconnected very, very deeply. And then number three, I choose relationship. And I understand from relationship, I think the essential part of that is interaction. I think as a human being, we are so much dependent on interaction. And then number four was development. 5 was family, and that is very, very interesting for me, because I feel that I have changed so much. Family is a very, very culture connected term. So in different type of society, you use the same word, but actually it means so many different things for different people, depending on how you have learned to understand that. And during my childhood, family was number one. If I would return to that time, I would put that as a number one. But now it is number 5. That doesn't mean that I don't care about family, but I think I look at things now so differently. I feel that family is basically it has been expanding, like it is about the whole world. It is not about what is just around me. It's about the whole society. And then I have stepped into a phase that nowadays I don't even think that family is only related to human being and people, but it is related to the whole nature. So and because of that, I put in this way, spiritual, I think it is something that the way that I understand what it is something that is unique for human being, and is something that you may, at least personally, I enjoy most when I get to that area. And I think is a kind of source for the many other things that I love, creativity and art. And I think that is that is so essential as a kind of foundation. It is so necessary for getting to that level, to that space, to start feeling the natural creativity. So that was my summary. But as I said, it depends so much on the person, on what kind of perception you have, what you have learned, where you put into what kind of context you use, a cultural context. And because I also very appreciate, or it is very important for me that at the same time that, sense of responsibility, but I think one of the best thing in life is sense of being yourself. And if it is about freedom or whatever it is also about honesty, that you really get the freedom to be honest for yourself and others. So spirituality is number one anyway for me.
All right, thank you, Siamäk. That's amazing, and I'd love to point out something very important that you touched on, which is a second part of what the discovery of values looks like. Because as you pointed out very well, we define our values with these words, which are very abstract in nature, like spirituality. What spirituality is so different to each individual, or development, or any of these areas, as well as values that we might have in each of them, like career, like relationships. So this leads me, I would like to make this suggestion for our participants as well. If you want to explore our values, ask yourself what's important to you about life. That's number one. And then the second question, which you brought up, Siamäk, is, okay, what does this mean to me? Because we use similar words to express very different things and experiences, right? So what does it mean, spirituality or communication or honesty? And give your own definition. And then there's another question, number 3, is how do you know, or what has to happen so you know that you're meeting that value? How do you know it's being met, it's being fulfilled? This provides valuable insight, and it also applies in companies and in teams, because now let's say we know each other's values, but how do we respect them? How do we meet them? There's this very important point in values also, is that when we're aligned in values, we tend to have good relationships and collaborate well. On the other hand, when our values are being stepped upon or not met, we react. They're emotional hot buttons, right? So we tend to have emotional reactions to them being crossed or not met. All right, now let's explore further. So this is a hierarchy of our areas in life. Then we have here some questions to enable us the discovery of values in a certain area or in life in general. Values, amongst other things, determine how we feel after we've done something. So when we're doing things that are aligned with our values, we feel proud, we feel happy, we feel confident, our energy tends to increase. That's why we have here a few questions based on times you felt happy and confident, or times you felt proud of yourself, or times you felt a sense of fulfillment. What was present there? What was important that made you feel fulfilled? And then we have the next steps, this process takes some time. So if any of you has gone through it, we'll explore what you discovered. If not, we'll go through a shorter process of eliciting values. Then there's this step here to identify the values which came up through the previous exploration process. And then it's the process of putting them into a certain order from the most important to the least important. So let's see, perhaps starting with whoever would like to. Annika, you said that you explored this part as well.
Oh, I did.
You did? Okay, yeah. Let's see. Maybe we can write them down as well, and then we can put them next to the company values, so we explore the relationship between the two. Let's see.
All right. Oh, so we're going for the values listing. Yes.
Yeah.
Not those moments of, okay.
No, just the values that you discovered by exploring those. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, let's see. It was really difficult to pin down a word for a lot of these, and you notice that you've got these big emotions and big sort of rolling statements in your mind, and pin them into a word I found a lot more difficult than the process of defining values for a company through conversations and workshops and whatnot. But this is what I came up with. My number one value really was about love and family. So for me, you know, even the sort of first joyous moment that I was exploring there in step one related to the birth of my child. I really felt that I was born at that point as well. It was a joyous moment, and somehow that connection is superbly important. So love, my children, spending time with them, but also great appreciation for the greater family around me. My second value relates a lot more to this sort of independent thinking, and I named it discovery. Mm-hmm. Experiencing new, keeping eyes open, newness, whether it's ideas, cultures, art. And I really sort of link it to this sense of independence and adventure, and you know, whether it's a value or a want, but it's a very important part of the motivational system I find in me. Mm-hmm. The third one I named purposeful work. So I noticed that I'm driven to work too much, clearly, but solving sort of meaningful issues is important. And say at the moment, these relate to sustainability or equality and sort of women's rights and these sort of things. They raise very high on my map. So I saw somewhere in the material human service as a word. And for me, human service sort of links to dutifulness this here. So I also juxtapose this with hedonism, I suppose. I fill my life with these interesting causes, but it sabotages then the time I have for myself or health or family as such. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so love, discovery, purposeful work. And then I had two more that seemed important to enlist. And the first one of those is collaboration. I find myself a person who just loves to bring people together or ideas together, and it's sort of often my first thought when I'm you know, discovering something new, something that needs to be solved, that who needs to be a part of this, rather than sort of digging deep into analyzing the matter. My sort of mind darts into, you know, how to connect dots around this thing. So collaboration and bringing people together is superbly important as a value for me. And then I find that this almost like a moral value, integrity, seems mm-hmm. to be a big basis for me as well. That this like honesty, fairness aspect of things, and as you mentioned there, this topic or concept of emotional hot buttons, that I find is you know, one where I find a lot of hot buttons in myself, that if I feel that somebody or something or myself is unfairly treated by something, that really, I notice, brings an emotional response for me. So integrity and this sort of fair and square idea is very important.
Mm-hmm. All right. That's it. This is it.
A lot of words.
Yeah, but a beautiful work, Annika. You've discovered them. You've organized them. I think it's wonderful what you've come up with on your own. In general, we discover values together in a process, one-to-one process. But I think it's beautiful what you came up with. The clarity and the ways in which you connected to them and knowing, okay, this is a hot button. I think that's amazing. So thank you for sharing. I will go to Siamäk for now, and then we'll put them next to the company values. So let's see, Siamäk. I don't know if you've gone through those questions before. If you haven't, it's great because we'll have an opportunity to demonstrate another way of eliciting values that I think would be useful for everybody present here.
Yeah, thank you. Actually, I have some. I have a list.
You do? Okay.
Yes, it is actually easy to make, but again, I realized that when Annika, you were talking about law and family. Actually, it is interesting that when you start explaining, then I call that sense of responsibility, and and it is like it is also connected essentially to the purpose and what you believe. That is number one for me. I think is a kind of is a driving force. It is something that it gives the direction that what you really understand and what is your purpose in life. It is so powerful. It is so inspiring also at the same time. So, but you know, it is so much connected also to the responsibility and what you believe. Number two is freedom to be yourself, and this is something that I said about that a few minutes ago, and this is something that I think is the best thing that every human being could have, that you can be yourself. Is so much connected to, basically I see that as a kind of foundation for honesty, and then number three is respect, and I think that is also something that every individual appreciate, that every individual feel that when you are respected, then you feel that you have that place, you know, in your society, in your life. And number four is innovation or creativity. I think that is so interesting and so important for human being, at least for me. Number five is relationship, but I understood from, for example, when Annika was talking about collaboration, I think that is so important, that you bring people together. You don't put people against each other. I think that is something that, especially in this time, if you look at right now in our world where we live, it is actually a disaster that you know, we have so much different kind of activities that people they put people against each other, and this is so collaboration is also about interaction, which is very, very essential for our mental growth. And then number six is nature. So nature about everything, the environment where we live and the whole planet and beyond that. Number seven is diversity and culture and equality. I put this together because they are so much interconnected. But basically, when I talk about diversity, I see that every individual is different. It is not only about color, it's not about, you know, just a cultural background or whatever. Every individual human being is different, and it's very important that we understand that, and we also respect that. Then number 9 is fairness, and number 8 was fairness. Number 9 was peace and humanity.
Okay.
I was surprised that I didn't have anything about technology with all the background that I.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, it's also very, very clear. And thank you, Siamäk, for sharing your values with us. I find this, being a personal aspect to who we are, and I treasure shares of values. So thank you both for it. Now, of course, we could do further exploration on these lists, like what I mentioned previously. What does each of these words represent to you? And both of you explored, like, chunked down on some of your values, which was great. And then it's also how do you know you have them met, they're being met, what needs to happen in practice so you have an experience of your values being met. Now, for efficiency purposes, let's move forward with now looking at how do personal values connect to company values, and how would it look like, how would it look to find the sweet spot between the two? Now, looking at your own values, but this is something to tap into with team members, with colleagues, to be explored in individual contexts, right? So now, okay, let's look at Annika's personal values, and then we have the company values, right? I saw you having a reaction when you saw them put next to each other, right?
There's definitely a connection there. Right.
There is, right? What was your first perception when you saw them being next to each other?
Just the fact that I realize how interconnected these things are. Obviously, Vieser is a family company, part of a family company with a really long legacy. And in a certain sort of way, there is a DNA for the company that's been sort of evolving over many, many years. And I suppose I come from that same background. I've kind of sort of lived and breathed a lot of what I sort of constitute as values for the company. Because the other way to see this is that there was the CEO who said that let's do the company values, and funny enough, they reflect mine. But there is an interesting interconnection of certain values that I realized that I've inherited from my father, the founder of the company back in '73. There's certain sort of pioneering, discovering, aspect that was always there. That we need to solve problems. We need to look at the world in new ways and see what we can do about it. See how we can sort of fix something meaningful. Never be a Me Too player, but rather find those things where you can add value. And sort of that was instilled in me, and that was instilled back into this sort of conversation right here.
Yeah.
But it is interesting. I also find that caring is maybe not a value that I've found in a lot of companies, and that was the one that actually made me smile the most. That this workshop that we did around the Vieser values a few years back involved the entire organization. We're sitting there and wondering that what makes us us, and these words that from our perspective, like caring, it means we care about each other, we care about our customers clearly, but we care about the nature and the world around us, and we are just a caring bunch of people, and we want to do meaningful things to help this environment. So it's an interesting evolution I find of of one's own personal values and the company values and how they really actually align very well. And for me, this really now is a clear display of why I find myself at home in this organization. It's really sort of manifestation of that.
Yeah, beautiful. So what we have here is a happy situation where personal values naturally align to the company values and vice versa, because now we could take each value and explore, like for instance, top value on your personal values, like love and family. How do you valuing that links to you valuing caring, collaborative, dedicating, pioneering, and the other way around? Like, how does your the value you put on caring in the organization supports your value for love and family? There's a clear connection there, at least the way I see it from where I stand.
Certainly. And the collaboration part, that came sort of from Vieser perspective, from a very, yes, of course, we know the sort of ecosystem strategies and the ideas of how to be part of solving more meaningful problems if you were part of a bigger context and a bigger ecosystem that can solve systemic problems rather than you trying to tinker away with one tiny little part of it. But certainly we realized that as Vieser, the company, had been made independent back in 2016, we were a tiny company. So at the time when I took the helm and we started looking at those values, we were like 5 people. Now we're 20, but then particularly we were a very, very small team of people, and trying to sort of, you know, understand how to make a strategic transformation, how to take a bigger part of the stage that our size or manpower really would allow. We realized that we want to work together with different organizations, different people, have collaborations with designers, have collaborations with other brands that are within our field, other sort of problem solvers in a more technical sense, and so forth and so on. So that was a true sort of business requirement and a value from that perspective. And then it just happens to align with my own personal belief that there's always this sort of chain of good people, that there's always sort of more good to be found when you work on things together as much as you possibly can.
Yeah, beautiful. So it sounds like the team has grown and developed kind of in a natural alignment to the company values, and it's developed organically from who each individual is and what they align with, right? Talking about the sweet spot between personal values and company values. All right, thank you, Annika. Let's look at Siamäk now. And what's the connection between the two sets of values? So let's see them put next to each other. And explore what is it that you're perceiving, Siamäk, as a first impact of seeing the two lists one next to each other?
Yeah, I think basically it is, you know, I have gone through this process during years, and when I have made my decisions, and the first time when I came to Genelec, I was totally surprised, because I was thinking that, hey, this is something that I have been searching for a long time, for the whole life, and now suddenly I am at home. And then I had a chance to get, you know, to become a friend with Ilbo Martikane, who was the founder, and it was something so special that I really, every day I have felt that I have had a kind of privilege to, you know, be in this kind of situation. this is something that I have said to also our people, that I hope and I try my best that every individual feel like that, because then you start feeling that you are living, you are is like every day that you are dealing with this thing. It is about living. It's not about now being at work or anything like that. And I think number one was really important for ILPO, it was the purpose actually where Genelec was started. It was not as a company, it was established after they had done something. They realized that, okay, in order to start, making business or making those agreements, they should have a company. But the reason that they started doing that job, it was because of the passion and the purpose that they had. So it was like their connection with the sound, with the music, and that was the main driving force for them. And then it was very interesting to see also that as a person, Ilbo was very I would say that, like, I feel that I am so a shy person, but he had a very, very strong internal energy to become somebody. And at the same time, there were things like respect, that how they react to different kind of people, culture, different kind of situation. Innovation is something that it is in the core of whatever Genelec has done during the last 45 years. So I have in many situations where I have been representing Genelec. Actually, I don't look at that even as a company. I look at that as a kind of a way of living in this life. And it is, for me, it has been very, very difficult to separate that now I am somebody else and I'm representing something else. It has become like, I'm talking about the same thing. Mm-hmm. And this is very interesting because I think also in terms of motivation is very interesting, because there are so many ways to actually build this kind of or create this kind of connection. And what Annika said, that her relationship or connection with the company, of course, it comes from the family, and this is something that in a way it might be easier to find that connection because you grow up in that kind of environment. But I am not from that family. I'm not the owner. I'm not, and I have been thinking so much about this thing, that how to create this kind of connection, because for the family company, the only thing that you can 100% say, okay, there are advantages, disadvantages, but the only thing that for 100% you can say that is owned by a family. That is the only thing that you can say. Mm-hmm. But you cannot expect that every person in that company would start feeling that he or she is part of a family. And this is something that very often we mix. And another thing is that when we talk about those, I have a personal challenge with when we connect the values to leadership. At the same time that I really think that is very, very important. At the same time, I'm very careful with that, because if you start putting those values, a kind of thing that people, they should be like, you start thinking that everybody should have those values in order to be successful in this community or be motivated. I think at the same time it is in conflict with letting people to be free, because then it becomes, if we too much we start emphasizing on these things, it may become a kind of ideological thing, which is a disaster. So so we have to be, I think we have to be very, very careful. This is a kind of tool that could help people to, I think, in terms of discovering yourself and then finding the harmony. This is very, very useful tool and very essential, because that's the basically only way to get a kind of deep connection with the community. You are part of that. But I see a full match between myself and you know, Genelec. As I said, it is just amazing. We have discussed so much with Ilbo during that time that when he asked me to you know, look at new, you know, act as a managing director, I said that after weekend I will answer to you. And then during weekend I start feeling that, I start imagining that if I would win lottery 7 million during that time, would I take this responsibility or not? On Monday, would I go to work or not? And then on Sunday, I felt that I'm unconfident. And because of that, I never actually read my agreement. So when Ilbo put that agreement, you know, I said that I don't care about the agreement. He said that, okay, put the sign anyway. So I put and I have kept that now for 20 years. I have not read the agreement because I don't want to read that.
Oh, Siamäk, thank you. I want to stop here for a little bit, because you made another, I mean, there were many great points, and there's especially one that I would like to shed a light on. Again, we have a happy case of matching between personal values and company values, and the passion you're putting in your words, Siamäk. I can see and hear and feel that there is this, you know, match and feeling at home and belonging in the company. Now, what you raised is, what do we do when there's not a natural alignment of people in the teams and the company values? And I would like to lead this conversation into what can we do to find this sweet spot and create the bridge, because I loved how you hit the nail on its head with this one, saying that, okay, we cannot impose values onto people, because it would turn into an ideological thing. And I'm totally with you on that. And what I found, like working with both company leaders and employees and small business owners, is that there are these two ways. It's either, you know, people evolve from the beginning with the company, with the business, and they have values that are naturally aligned to the company values. And then there's this other way in which, you know, each individual has their own values, and they're unique, they're personal, they're not good or bad, right or wrong. It's just each person's values, right? And then there are the company values. What do we do with these if they don't naturally align? And one of the most effective ways that I found working with values was to create bridges. So this would start with, first and foremost, discovering each individual's personal values. And it can be done in a small business with a coach, or either even the entrepreneur or the business owner, in larger companies with department managers or team leaders. Now there's many applications of that. If we know each individual's personal values, then we can utilize those to increase engagement and motivation, being connected to their values as they are, not as we imagine them to be or as we would like them to be. And then we can also enable a connection between, let's say that we would have here person in a team list of values, and then we have the company values. Like we would define each value, what they mean, how do they manifest, how do they express themselves, and then we would ask questions and we would support a person to see how contributing to, let's say, company's number one value would contribute to the fulfillment of their personal value. Like how I would ask, okay, let's look at belief, how nurturing belief would feed your value for responsibility and sense of purpose. How would it feed your freedom to be yourself? How would it feed respect? And so on. When people begin to link these two together, then they have like a personal connection to the company values, which are no longer just beautiful words, but they have a meaning and they have a behavior that's being manifest to express those values. And there was something else I wanted to ask you. I don't know, how are we doing time-wise, Alexandra?
We're fine. We still have 7 minutes. So if we wrap up this part in a couple of minutes, then we still have 5 minutes for the Q&A and just takeaways.
Yeah. Because I would like to lead into what can leaders do to encourage, to enable values-driven behaviors. And this process of discovering values and linking them to the company values is one of them. And I'm curious, in short, from both Annika and Siamäk, what did you find, like, if we were to look at leadership mindsets or actions or strategies that you have implemented and noticed that they enabled values-driven behaviors in your organizations? If you could name at least one, would be great.
Well, Team Vieser, we collect the whole organization together a couple of times a year, and we always discuss the values. So we always go through examples of, what was caring, what was pioneering, what was collaborative, what have we done. So it's sort of a team-driven effort as well, that they will bring some examples of what they did and why that was successful. But I started thinking about this, that we do use this in recruitment as well. As part of the sort of recruitment conversations, mine is always the last one, just to double check the sort of dynamic piece and the motivation piece. So I talk about the sort of big picture of Vieser and who we are and what was the sort of transformation journey and what are our values. And it's probably something that we hope that will resonate, that you have that twinkle in the eye, and normally it's something that, I like this and I want to be a part of this, as part of that recruitment process. So then it's almost like a filter into the conversation. As Siamäk was saying there earlier, diversity is superbly important, and we want to make sure that our team members are very diverse and come from different fields. But this is maybe something that we hope that will combine us.
Excellent, thank you. What about you, Siamäk?
Yeah, I think the most powerful way to basically somehow deal with this thing is action. So it's about the way that you live, you do your job, you interact with people every day. And I think that is the most powerful way to show that how you are committed to certain things.
Yeah.
And people, they can feel that. I think it's something that I believe that this kind of emotional level communication is very, very important, that people, they feel and they they start trusting that this is something that I don't need to explain even more.
Mm.
And so that is the way that it has worked for us. And but on top of that, we have also done a lot of work, especially I think for when company moves forward and we move from generation to generation. I think this kind of generation gap is very, very critical for companies. And we know that there's so much research that especially in third generation, it becomes, this kind of attachment between these things that, the history, the heritage, and it changed, and that is a big risk for every company. And because of that, we have done for last 20 years, we have done a lot of work also how to is about self-awareness and trying to understand what is this company, what was the purpose, where we are, who you are, why we are as we are, and so on. And we have done a lot of work to discover that. And then very, very, I would say that the best work that I am very proud of that, and we have done during years, it has been the identity work that we have done, that we have tried, we have involved the whole personnel, and we have looked at those questions, that who we are, and we have defined, we call it a cultural map. Alexandra knows, and I think that is the framework, and that has helped in terms of leadership. That has helped so much, that this is the framework. It is not about giving instruction to people, but this is a framework that within that we make decisions. And then there are certain principles that, okay, if you are going to choose, for example, components from or very minor things up to strategic choices that you make, this is the framework. And I think it has helped us a lot, and it is a kind of glue that now everybody knows, and we have been communicating that very, very often. And there are certain cases that I personally feel good that you talk about, this kind of when you hire new people. I've said that, always I say that my job here is not to make interview with you. My job is that do my best to explain that what is this reality where we live as honestly as possible, because you are going to make your decision, and your responsibility is to be honest with yourself. And the only thing that I'm looking for is that, can you find a connection between your heart and what is this reality?
Thank you so much. This is valuable insight here from you, from both of you, and I love that. I hope that our participants could find perhaps applicable tools and strategies.
Thank you. Let's wrap up the session today. I wish you all a really beautiful spring and summer. And we have another event coming up at the end of May, where we talk about sustainability and how sustainability will be or can be enacted within the company culture. How can company culture support our sustainability goals? So welcome for that one, and you can await our invitation by email. Thank you again, Siamäk. And
thank you very much. Thank you, and very appreciated that you touched such deep and important point and subject.
Thank you, Alexandra, for having me, and thank you, Siamäk, for being here and providing your insightful input. And yeah, I look forward to exploring this forward.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Have a great day ahead.
Thank you.